I am a 26-year-old female, and my fiancé Mark was 30. We had been together for 4 years. The wedding planning had been a nightmare, mostly because of his mother, Diana. She had an opinion on everything, from the color of the napkins to the font on the invitations. Mark always told me to just let it go. He said it was easier to agree with her than to fight. He said her bark was worse than her bite. I tried to believe him. I wanted a peaceful life. I wanted to marry the man I loved, so I smiled. I nodded. I let her have her way on the little things. I thought I was being the bigger person. I thought I was keeping the peace. But then came the rehearsal dinner. The dinner was held at a nice restaurant our parents had booked together. It was supposed to be a happy, relaxed evening before the big day. My parents were there. His father, a quiet and kind man named Robert, was there. Our friends and the bridal party were all laughing and talking. I was wearing a simple, elegant navy blue dress. I had made sure it was nothing too flashy. I wanted my wedding dress to be the main event. I felt happy. I felt like we had finally made it through the stressful planning part. Then Diana walked in. She was wearing a white gown. It was not just a white dress. It was a floor-length lace and satin gown. It had intricate beading on the bodice. It looked like a wedding dress. It was more elaborate than many wedding dresses I had seen. The room went quiet for a moment. Everyone turned to look at her. She glided into the room with a serene smile on her face, as if she were the main attraction. She walked right up to me. "Oh, darling," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "I hope you do not mind." I looked for something else, but this was the only thing that fit the occasion. I stared at her. I could not find my voice. She leaned in closer, her perfume overwhelming me. "I did not want to upstage you, of course," she whispered, but it was loud enough for Mark and my parents, who were standing nearby, to hear. That was the line that made something inside me snap. It was the fake apology, the pretend concern, the blatant public display of disrespect dressed up as a compliment. And then I looked at Mark. I was waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to tell his mother she was not hot and loud. It was a quiet, deep, and sudden certainty. This was not just about a dress anymore. My mother, bless her heart, tried to salvage the moment. She stepped forward and put a hand on my arm. "Well, Diana, you certainly do look memorable," she said, her tone impeccably polite, but with an edge I knew all too well. Diana's smile widened. "Thank you, Helen. I do try." She turned her attention back to me, her eyes scanning my simple navy dress with a look of pity. "You look sweet, dear. Very appropriate." The word hung in the air between us. Appropriate. Like I was a child who had managed to dress herself correctly for a school play. I felt a tremor of rage go through me, but I forced my face to remain neutral. I had to get through this dinner. I had to get through this night. But I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I could not get through a lifetime of this. I could not marry a man who would stand by and smile while his mother declared herself the true bride. I finally found my voice. "It is an interesting choice, Diana," I said, my own voice sounding distant to my ears. "I thought so too," she replied, completely missing or ignoring the ice in my tone. She then turned to her son. "Mark, darling, get me a drink, will you? All that shopping was exhausting." "Of course, Mom," Mark said, giving my shoulder a quick, dismissive squeeze before heading to the bar. He did not even look me in the eye. He just obeyed. I watched him walk away. The man I was supposed to promise my life to tomorrow was acting like his mother's butler, and he did not even see it. Or worse, he saw it and he did not care. My father came to my side, his expression grim. He was a man of few words, but his eyes told me everything. He was furious on my behalf. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" he asked quietly. I nodded, even though it was a lie. "I am fine, Dad," I said. I had to be fine. For now. The rest of the dinner was a blur. I sat at the head table between Mark and my maid of honor, Chloe. Mark tried to make small talk. He kept reaching for my hand. I let him take it, but my fingers were stiff and cold. I could feel Diana's eyes on me. Not just Diana. The problem was Mark. His smile had been the real catalyst. His smile was the proof that I was alone in this. Later, As people started giving toasts, Diana's husband Robert stood up. He was a decent man, always kind to me, but completely overpowered by his wife. He raised his glass. To the happy couple, Mark and Sarah, may your life together be filled with joy. He sounded sincere, but he looked tired. He glanced at his wife, then quickly looked away. He knew. He knew what she had done was wrong, but he was as helpless as his son. When it was Mark's turn to speak, he stood up and beamed at the crowd. "I am the luckiest man in the world," he began. "I am marrying the most wonderful woman, and I have the most supportive family a guy could ask for." He looked at me, then his gaze shifted to his mother. "Thank you, Mom, for everything. You have always been my biggest champion." He said it without a trace of irony. He truly believed it. He saw her behavior not as sabotage but as support. My head started to ache. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I did not want to see. This was not a single incident. This was a pattern, a system, and I was the outsider who was expected to just accept it. After the dinner, as we were leaving, Diana cornered me by the door. Mark was a few feet away, talking to one of his cousins. "I do hope I did not cause you any distress tonight, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You knew what you were doing, Diana," I said, my voice low and steady. I was done pretending. She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "I simply wore a beautiful dress to celebrate my son's happiness. If you feel insecure, that is not really my problem, is it?" I felt a surge of adrenaline. This is what she is like, I thought. This is the real her, without the thin veil of politeness. "Insecurity has nothing to do with it," I said. "This is about respect. Something you clearly do not have for me or for this marriage." "Marriage?" she scoffed softly. "Oh, honey, you are just marrying my son. I am his mother. That is a bond you will never understand. You are temporary. I am forever." I stared at her, truly seeing the depth of her contained fury. "What was what?" Mark said, starting the engine. He was genuinely confused. "The dinner was great. Everyone seemed to have a good time. Your mother, Mark," I said, turning to face him. "She wore a wedding dress to our rehearsal dinner, and you did not say a single word." He sighed, the sound that always preceded an excuse for her. "Oh, come on, Sarah. It was not a wedding dress. It was just a white gown. You know how she is. She loves to be dramatic." "Dramatic?" I could not believe what I was hearing. "She did it to humiliate me. She told me she did not want to upstage me. She was mocking me, Mark, and you just stood there and smiled." "What was I supposed to do?" he said, his voice rising. "Make a scene? Yell at my own mother in front of our entire families? It is the night before our wedding. I was trying to keep the peace." "There is no peace," I shouted, finally losing my composure. "There is just you letting her walk all over me, and me being expected to shut up and take it. That is not peace. That is surrender." "You are overreacting," he said, his jaw tight. "It is just a dress. It does not mean anything. By tomorrow, no one will even remember it." "I will," I thought. "I will remember it forever. I will remember that you smiled." We drove the rest of the way to my apartment in silence. He was supposed to stay with his best man that night. When he pulled up to the curb, he turned to me. "Look, I'm sorry you are upset, but please, do not let this ruin our wedding day. Tomorrow is about us." "Is it?" I asked quietly. "Because tonight felt like it was all about her. And you seemed perfectly fine with that." He looked hurt. "That is not fair, Sarah." "Is it not?" I said. I opened the car door. "Good night, Mark." I got out of the car and walked into my building without looking back. I did not want him to see the tears that were finally starting to fall. I got into my apartment and locked the door behind me. I leaned against it, my body trembling. The beautiful future I had imagined with him was cracking right before my eyes. His words echoed in my head. "You are overreacting. It is just a dress." Sat on the edge of my bed. I thought about Diana's words. "You are temporary. I am forever." She did not just believe that, she was actively working to make it true. She was trying to push me out before I was even officially in. And Mark, my Mark, was her willing accomplice. He was so conditioned to please her, so afraid of her disapproval, that he was willing to sacrifice my happiness for her satisfaction. I lay awake for hours, replaying the night in my head. The white dress, the fake whisper, the smug smile, and worst of all, Mark's placating, complicit grin. It was not a momentary lapse in judgment on his part. It was who he was. He was a man who would always choose the path of least resistance, even if that path led right over me. Sometime after midnight, I got up. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The anger had burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. I was not going to be a victim in this story. I was not going to let Diana win. And I was not going to marry a man who thought her behavior was acceptable. But I was not just going to call off the wedding. That was too simple. That would let them off the hook. Diana would spin a story about how I was unstable, how I was the one who overreacted. Mark would play the jilted, heartbroken groom. Number. They did not deserve an easy way out. They deserved to be exposed. I picked up my phone again. I had an idea. It was a long shot, but it was the only thing I could think of. I scrolled through my contacts and found Robert's number, Mark's father. He had always been quiet, but he had also always been kind to me. He looked at his wife with a sort of weary resignation that I was starting to understand. Maybe, just maybe, he was as tired of her games as I was. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over the call button. It was late. It was a crazy idea, but Diana's smug face flashed in my mind. I pressed the button. It rang once, twice. Hello? His voice was groggy. Robert? It is Sarah. I am so sorry to call this late. There was a pause. Sarah! Is everything all right? Did something happen? He sounded more awake now and regret. He learned early on that it was just easier to give her what she wants. But what she wants is to ruin his marriage before it even starts, I said. She does not see it that way, he explained. In her mind, she is protecting him. From what, I have never been sure. From any woman who might take her place, I suppose? A new thought, ugly and sharp, pierced through my mind. This was not just about emotional control. Diana was obsessed with appearances and status. What if there was more to it? What if there was something financial at stake? Mark and I had been saving for a house. We had a substantial joint account where we put all our wedding gift money in our savings. Robert, I started, my heart pounding. This might be a strange question, but are you aware of any financial arrangements between Mark and his mother? Any joint accounts or debts? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I thought maybe I had gone too far. Maybe I had crossed a line. Why do you ask that, Sarah? He finally said, his voice cautious. Because this feels like more than just a power trip, I said, choosing my words carefully. It feels like she thinks she has a right to his life. A tangible right. And Mark lets her. I need to understand why. Robert sighed again, even heavier this time. Diana manages a small trust that was left for Mark by his grandmother. It was supposed to be turned over to him on his 30th birthday, but Diana convinced him to let her keep managing it. She said she could get a better return. I felt my blood run cold. Mark had turned 32 months ago. He had never mentioned a trust. He never told me about that, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He probably did not think it was important, Robert said. He trusts his mother completely with financial matters, too completely, in my opinion. And our joint account? I asked, my mind racing. The one with our house savings? I do not know anything about that, he said. That is between you and him. But he had told me enough. Diana had financial control over Mark. That was her leverage. That was the chain that kept him bound to her. It was not just love or loyalty. He was a subsidiary of his mother. I got up and walked to my laptop. I opened it and logged into our joint bank account. I had not checked it in a few weeks. We had agreed not to touch the money until after the honeymoon, when we would start house hunting. I scrolled through the recent transactions, direct deposits from our jobs, checks from relatives for wedding gifts. Everything looked normal at first. But then I saw it. A wire transfer. A very large one. It was dated 1 week ago. $50,000. Transferred to an account I did not recognize. The memo line contained just one word. Loan. My hands started to shake. $50,000. That was more than half of our down payment. Gone. I clicked on the details of the transfer. The receiving account was not in Diana's name. It was a holding company, a numbered company. It was meant to be untraceable. But Diana was not as smart as she thought she was. I did a quick search for the company name. It took me less than 5 minutes to find the public registration documents. The sole director of the company was listed, Diana. She had taken $50,000 from our joint account. She had stolen our future. And Mark had let her. Or, even worse, he had helped her. The memo said loan. That was his plausible deniability. He could claim he thought it was a temporary loan she would pay back, but I knew better. I knew Diana. That money was never coming back. The rage I felt earlier was nothing compared to this. This was a violation on a completely different level. This was theft. This was a coordinated betrayal by the two people I was supposed to trust the most. My mind went into overdrive. The wedding was in less than 12 hours. I could call it off right now. I could send a mass text. But that was not enough. They could not be allowed to just walk away from this. They had to face the consequences. In public. I started to formulate a plan. A new plan. A much better plan. I took a screenshot of the wire transfer. I downloaded the corporate registration document showing Diana as the director. I saved them both to a folder on my desktop. Then I started to think about the wedding day schedule. The ceremony, the photos, the reception, the speeches. The speeches. That was it. That was the perfect moment.
Might not be necessary, but I will need a getaway driver.
Her reply came back instantly. I have a full tank of gas and a playlist of breakup anthems. I am ready when you are. I finally lay down, not to sleep, but to rest. I closed my eyes and pictured the scene. Diana in her ridiculous white gown, beaming from the head table. Mark looking proud and happy. And me, standing at the podium ready to tell everyone the truth. A small, cold smile touched my lips in the darkness. My rehearsal was over. Tomorrow was the performance, and I was going to bring the house down. The morning of the wedding felt surreal. My mother and bridesmaids were a whirlwind of activity around me. They were excited, chattering about the day, about how beautiful I looked, about how happy they were for me. I played my part. I smiled. I laughed. I let them fuss over my hair and makeup. Inside, I was a coiled spring. Every smile felt like a lie. Every congratulations felt like a punchline to a joke only I understood. My mother looked at me, her eyes soft. "Are you feeling all right, honey? You seem a little quiet." "Just nervous, Mom," I lied. "It is a big day." "Of course it is," she said, squeezing my hand. "But it is going to be wonderful." Mark is a good man. I just nodded. I could not trust myself to speak. A good man. That is what everyone thought. That is what I had thought. But a good man does not lie to his partner. A good man does not let his mother steal from their shared future. Chloe caught my eye in the mirror. She gave me a subtle, questioning look. I gave her the slightest of nods. She understood. She was my anchor in this sea of blissful ignorance. When it was time to put on the dress, I felt a strange detachment. It was just a costume for the role I was about to play. As my mother zipped it up, she teared up. "Oh, Sarah, you are so beautiful. Your father is going to cry when he sees you." I felt a pang of guilt. My parents were so happy. This was going to hurt them. But the alternative, to live a lie, to be trapped in a family that disrespected and stole from me, was so much worse. This short-term pain was necessary for my long-term survival.
Her, Diana, sitting in the front row. She was not wearing her white gown from the night before. She had changed into a champagne-colored dress, still far too bridal for the mother of the groom, but slightly less egregious. She caught my eye and gave me a small, condescending smile. It was a smile that said, "I won. You are marrying him, but you are marrying him on my terms." That smile was all I needed. It strengthened my spine. It cleared my head. My wavering stopped. I knew what I had to do. The ceremony was a fog. I said the vows automatically, my voice sounding hollow. When the officiant said, "You may now kiss the bride," Mark leaned in and kissed me. It felt like kissing a stranger. The crowd cheered. We walked back down the aisle, hand in hand, smiling for the cameras. It was the best acting performance of my life. The reception was held in a beautiful ballroom. The tables were decorated exactly as Diana had insisted. Everything was perfect on the surface. A perfect, glittering lie. We did our first dance. Mark held me close, whispering in my ear. "See? Everything is perfect. I told you it would be." I just rested my head on his shoulder, counting the seconds until this was over. During dinner, I could feel the tension building inside me. Chloe kept shooting me encouraging looks from across the room. Robert, Mark's father, looked at me with a worried expression. He knew something was coming, he just did not know what. Finally, it was time for the speeches. My father went first, giving a heartfelt, loving speech that made me want to cry for what I was about to do to him. Then Chloe, the maid of honor, gave her speech. She kept it short and sweet, but she ended with a line that was clearly just for me. "Sarah is the strongest person I know," she said, looking directly at me. "She knows her own worth and she never, ever settles for less than she deserves." To Sarah. Everyone cheered. Mark squeezed my hand under the table. "She is right," he whispered. "I am so lucky." "You have no idea," I thought. Then it was the best man's turn. He told a few funny stories about Mark, and then it was time. The DJ announced, "And now, a few words from our groom, Mark." Mark stood up, took the microphone. Me. And finally, let us hear from the bride herself, Sarah.
This was it. My heart was pounding in my chest like a drum. I stood up, my legs feeling a little shaky. I walked to the podium and took the microphone from Mark. I looked out at the sea of smiling faces. They were all expecting a sweet, tearful speech about my love for my new husband. They were about to be very disappointed. "Thank you, everyone, for being here to celebrate with us," I began, my voice clear and steady. "It means the world to us to have all our friends and family here on this special day." I paused, letting the happy, expectant silence settle over the room. I looked at Mark. He was watching me with a look of pure adoration. Then I looked at Diana. She had that same smug, self-satisfied look on her face. "I have so many people to thank," I continued. "My parents for their endless love and support. My wonderful bridesmaids, especially my maid of honor, Chloe, who has always had my back. And, of course, my new husband, Mark." I turned to him and gave him a bright, false smile. "Mark, you said in your speech that you promised to protect me. And I think that is the perfect place for me to start." A few people chuckled, thinking I was making a joke. Mark smiled, waiting for the punchline. "You see," I said, my voice dropping slightly, becoming more serious. "I learned recently that marriage is not just about love and trust. It is also about transparency, about being partners in everything, including finances." The mood in the room shifted slightly. The smiles became a little more fixed. People were confused. This was not the typical bridal speech. I saw Mark's smile falter. He knew where this was going. "I thought Mark and I were partners," I said, looking directly at him now. The microphone was in my hand, but I was talking only to him. "I thought we were a team."
But I recently discovered that Mark has been part of another team for a very long time. A team with a very demanding captain. I let my gaze drift over to the head table, right to Diana. Her smug expression was gone. Her face was a mask of disbelief. Upstage me. A charming sentiment. But I have learned that with Diana, you have to look beyond the words and at the actions. And her actions speak very, very loudly. I reached into the small purse Chloe had been holding for me. I pulled out a few folded pieces of paper. They were the printouts, the bank statement, the corporate registration. "I would like to propose a toast," I said, my voice dripping with ice. "To my mother-in-law, Diana, who taught me a very valuable lesson last night. She taught me to always check the receipts." I unfolded the first piece of paper. It was the screenshot of the wire transfer. "This is a transfer for $50,000 from the joint account Mark and I had for our future home. It was transferred out of our account 1 week ago." A collective gasp went through the room. I looked at Mark. His face was pale. He was shaking his head as if to deny it. "The memo on the transfer says loan," I continued, my voice merciless. "A loan to a mysterious numbered company, but a little digging shows who the director of that company is." I held up the second piece of paper. "My mother-in-law, Diana." All eyes in the room swiveled to Diana. Her face was ashen. She looked like she had been slapped. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. "So I would like to thank Diana," I said, raising my voice to make sure everyone heard. "Thank you for wearing that white dress." It was the final clue I needed. "It made me realize that you are not just a needy mother. You are a thief. You stole from me. You stole from your own son. You stole our future so you could have, what? Another bauble? More control?" I turned back to Mark. He looked broken. "And you," I said, my voice trembling with the force of my anger. "You stood by and let her do it. You lied to me about the trust fund. You lied to me about this loan. You smiled while she humiliated me. You told me I was overreacting. You told me to keep the peace, but this is not peace, Mark. This is a hostage situation, and I am done negotiating." I let the papers drop from my hand onto the floor. "So the wedding is off." I said the words and felt a profound sense of release. The heavy weight I had— Hatred. "You are temporary," I said to her, throwing her own words back in her face. "Your control over him ends today." Then I turned and walked away. I did not run. I walked with my head held high through the ballroom. I could feel every eye on me. I walked past the tables of stunned guests, past the beautiful decorations, past the ridiculously expensive cake we would never cut. Chloe was waiting for me by the exit. She had my bag in her hand. She fell into step beside me. "That was the best wedding speech I have ever heard," she said, a grin spreading across her face. "Let us get out of here," I said. We walked out of the ballroom and did not look back. We got into her car and she peeled out of the parking lot. The breakup anthem playlist was already on. As we drove away, I finally let myself cry. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. It was over. I was free. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. My phone started blowing up within minutes. Texts and missed calls from Mark, from his family, from my family, from friends. I turned it off. I did not want to talk to anyone. Chloe took me to her apartment. She poured me a huge glass of wine and ordered my favorite pizza. We sat on her couch and I told her everything. The trust fund, the conversation with Robert, the $50,000. She listened patiently, her expression growing more and more furious on my behalf. "That woman is not just a monster," she said when I had finished. "She is a criminal. You have to go to the police, Sarah." "I do not want to," I said, shaking my head. "I do not want to get into a legal battle. I just want my money back, and I want to be done with them." "Robert will handle it," I added, thinking of the look on his face. He is a decent man. You will be mortified I was right. The next morning, after I had finally gotten some sleep, I turned my phone back on. There was a flood of messages, a dozen missed calls from Mark, 20 texts, each one more desperate than the last. Sarah, please call me. I can explain. I love you. Do not do this. I will pay you back. There was also unrepentant. She insisted the money was an investment that would have benefited us all. She saw nothing wrong with what she had done. This is not the family I wanted for you, Robert wrote, and it is not the man I raised my son to be. I am ashamed of them both. I have already spoken to my lawyer. The $50,000 will be returned to your personal account by the end of the week. I will also be transferring you an additional $25,000 to cover your half of the wedding expenses and for the emotional distress this has caused you. It is the least I can do. He went on to say that he was taking control of Mark's trust fund away from Diana. He was also insisting that Mark go to therapy to deal with his relationship with his mother. As for my wife, he wrote, we have a long and difficult road ahead of us. I do not know what our future holds, but I know that her behavior can no longer be enabled. He ended the email by wishing me all the best for my future. You are a strong, intelligent woman, Sarah. You deserve a man who will stand by you, not behind his mother. I am truly sorry that man was not my son. I read the email twice. I felt a wave of gratitude for Robert. He was doing the right thing. He was holding them accountable in a way I never could have. I replied to his email with a simple, "Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it more than you know." A few days later, as promised, the money appeared in my bank account. $75,000. I used it to book a trip for myself, a real honeymoon, a trip to a place I had always wanted to go, a place Mark had never been interested in. I needed to wash the memory of him and his mother away. My own family was shocked but incredibly supportive. My dad was furious at Mark and Diana but proud of me. You did the right thing, sweetheart, he told me. It took guts. My mom was sad for the wedding that never was, but she understood. No marriage can survive that kind of poison, she said. I never spoke to Mark again. He tried to call a few more times, sent a few more pleading texts. I blocked his number. I blocked all of them. Diana, his cousins, his friends. I wanted a clean break. I heard through the grapevine that he and his mother were no longer speaking to his father.
That was a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. The wedding dress was still at my parents' house. My mom had asked what I wanted to do with it. Sell it, I told her, or donate it. Let someone else have a happy day in it. The dress had served its purpose. It was not the dress I got married in. It was the dress I got free in. And that was a much better story. Diana had wanted to be the star of the show. And in the end, she was. She was the star of her own downfall. I took a sip of my wine and smiled. It was not a small, tight, accommodating smile. It was a real one. My trip was exactly what I needed. I spent 2 weeks exploring, eating new foods, meeting new people, and not thinking about Mark or Diana at all. When I came back, I felt refreshed and ready to start my new life. I found a new apartment in a different part of the city. I packed up my old life, leaving behind anything that reminded me of Mark. I sold the furniture we had bought together. I donated the gifts he had given me. It was a cleansing. A few months later, I ran into Chloe for coffee. She had been my rock through the whole ordeal. "So, have you heard the latest?" she asked, stirring her latte. "I try not to," I said. "I have a pretty strict no Mark and Diana news diet." "Well, you might want to make an exception for this," she said, her eyes sparkling with gossip. "My cousin works with Mark's cousin. The family is in shambles." I leaned forward, my curiosity getting the better of me. "Go on." "Apparently, Robert followed through on his threats," Chloe said. "He and Diana are officially separated. He froze her access to their joint accounts. She is living in a small rented apartment now. She had to sell her car." I could not help the small, satisfied smile that spread across my face. "Wow," I said.
And that is not even the best part, Chloe continued. Mark is a wreck. He is living back at home with his mom in her sad little apartment. He lost his job because he was so distracted and miserable all the time. He apparently calls Robert every day begging for forgiveness and money, but Robert is holding firm. He told him he will not get another dime until he gets a job and completes
against hers. Life moved on. I focused on my career. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my relationship with Mark. I dated a little, but I was not in a hurry. I was enjoying my independence. I was learning to trust my own judgment again. The whole experience had been painful, but it had also been a powerful lesson. It taught me to pay attention to red flags. It taught me that keeping the peace at the cost of your own self-respect is never worth it. And it taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. About a year after the non-wedding, I was at a work conference. During a coffee break, a man I did not know approached me. He was older, well-dressed, and had a kind face. "Excuse me," he said. "You are Sarah, right?" "Yes," I said, a little surprised. "I am a friend of Robert's," he said, extending his hand. "My name is George. Robert has told me a lot about you." I shook his hand, my guard immediately up. "Oh," I said. "Is everything okay?" "Everything is fine," he said with a warm smile. "I just wanted to meet the woman who finally stood up to Diana. Robert calls you his hero, you know." I was taken aback. "His hero?" "I just did what I had to do." "You did more than that," George said. "You broke a cycle that has been going on for 30 years. Robert is a different man now. He is happier, more relaxed. He is finally living his own life. He is even dating someone new, a lovely woman who is nothing like Diana." I did not know what to say. I had never considered the long-term impact of my actions on Robert. I had only been thinking of my own escape. "And Mark?" I asked, unable to stop myself. George's smile faded a little. "Mark is a work in progress. He has a new job. He is still in therapy. He and his mother are still living together, but from what I hear, it is not a happy home. He is learning the hard way what life is like without his father's safety net." "I see," I said. "Robert wanted me to tell you something," George said, his expression serious. "He said to tell you that you gave him the courage to save himself, and he will be forever grateful for that." I felt of the word. That night, back in my hotel room, I thought about Diana's final venomous words to me. "You will regret this for the rest of your life." She could not have been more wrong. I had never regretted it. Not for a single moment. I had saved myself from a lifetime of misery, manipulation, and disrespect. I had chosen myself, and that was a choice that brought me nothing but peace. My life was my own now, and it was beautiful. And somewhere, in a small, sad apartment, a mother and her son were living out the consequences of their own choices. They were temporary. My happiness was forever. The years that followed were good ones. I excelled in my career, receiving a promotion that moved me to a new city. It was a fresh start in every way. I bought my own condo, using the money from the non-wedding as a down payment. Every time I walked through my front door, into a space that was entirely mine, decorated exactly as I wanted, I felt a quiet sense of victory. This was the home I had built for myself, on my own terms. I met a man, David. He was kind, funny, and incredibly supportive. He was also an orphan, which, I had to admit, was a point in his favor after my experience with Diana. He had no overbearing mother, no toxic family dynamics. He was just a good, solid person who loved me for who I was. When I told him the story of my almost wedding, he was horrified on my behalf. "I cannot even imagine that," he said, taking my hand. "What they did was monstrous. I am so proud of you for how you handled it." His reaction was so different from Mark's. Where Mark had been dismissive, David was empathetic. Where Mark had enabled, David was protective. It was then that I truly understood what a healthy partnership looked like. It was not about one person surrendering to keep the peace. It was about two people standing together, a united front against any challenge. When David proposed 2 years later, it was a quiet, private moment. Just the two of us in the home we now shared. There was no drama, no spectacle, just love. My answer was an easy, joyful yes. Planning our wedding was a completely different experience. It was fun. It was collaborative. We made every decision together. My parents were thrilled. They adored David. It was a rambling, pathetic, self-pitying mess. She wrote about how hard her life had become, how Robert had abandoned her, how Mark was a disappointment. He had a menial job and no ambition. He blamed her for everything. I did it all for him, she wrote. I was only ever trying to protect my son. You turned him against me. You ruined our family. You took everything from me. The letter was filled with blame, but there was no apology, no acknowledgement of her own wrongdoing. She was still the victim in her own story. In the last paragraph, she asked for money. She said she was about to be evicted from her apartment. She said it was the least I could do after destroying her life. I read the letter and felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just a vast, empty distance. She was a ghost from a past life, a life that no longer belonged to me. I folded the letter and put it in the shredder. I did not owe her a response. I did not owe her anything. The next day, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me press the button. Sarah? The voice was hesitant, unfamiliar, but I knew it instantly. It was Mark. What do you want, Mark? I asked, my voice flat. I heard you were getting married, he said. I wanted to say congratulations. Thank you, I said, waiting. And I wanted to say, I am sorry, he stammered, for everything. I was weak, I was stupid. I should have stood up for you, for us. It was the apology I had once longed to hear, but now it was too little, too late. The words were meaningless. They could not undo the betrayal. They could not heal the wound. I know, I said. Goodbye, Mark. I hung up before he could say anything else. I blocked the number. That chapter was finally, completely closed. There were no more lingering questions, no more what-ifs. Just the quiet certainty that I had made the right choice. Our wedding was perfect. We said our vows as the sun set over the ocean. David held my hands, his eyes full of love and admiration. He was my partner, my equal, my friend. We were a team.